we are a population who is resilient. Every time we have something happening, of course, at the beginning it's very difficult, but we stand up at the end of the day and we start again, we build again, we work harder. So if ever the ceasefire goes well, I don't know what well means now, but I mean, if ever we go back to a life that is calm, peaceful, I mean, we have everything to be living together with no problem and constructing our country for a better life. So human rights are central to our work. We approach them very carefully. So we focus, of course, on the right of people visually impaired. We target gender equality, women's rights, protection from violence, discrimination, access to education.
Welcome to the St. Martin's Cloak podcast, where we go behind the headlines to focus on humans, not statistics. In today's episode, we're speaking with Marie-Gabrielle Corm, a sociologist and the co-founder and executive director of Equal, a Franciscan NGO in Lebanon. We hear from Marie-Gabrielle about her critical work with Lebanon's visually impaired population, the extra challenges that visually impaired people face when they are displaced in an active war zone, along with Equal's work with migrants, women's rights, child protection, and much more. This is a truly unique conversation and look at humanitarian aid in a war zone. But first, a quick introduction. Hello, everyone. This is Andrew Loftusness recording from Istanbul.
And Miyosh Majore here, recording from London. Andrew, we're back once again with Lebanon. How do you feel about this episode?
Well, I was really glad that we were able to land this interview with Marie-Gabrielle. So very quickly, I just want to give a shout out to Father Roger and Father Lucien. Through a series of messages over WhatsApp, we're able to put us in contact with Marie-Gabrielle and with Equal. And as we'll get into in the interview here shortly, Equal has a very distinct mission, I think, within aid inside of Lebanon, in particular their work with the visually impaired population of Lebanon. And I thought it was very striking hearing Marie-Gabrielle's stories and her descriptions of what it's like not only to be displaced because of a war, because there's bombing going on in your neighborhood and all around you, but imagine being displaced while having a visual impairment.
Yeah.
Right. Of course, it's the kind of thing, I say imagine, and we have to imagine because that simply can't truly be comprehended unless you have lived it, and there's a number of things we could say there. On one hand, I was just very grateful. It's, to be frank, inspiring and encouraging to know that there are people out there like Marie-Gabrielle and like her teammates at Equal who are dedicating their lives to taking care of these issues, right? You and I were chatting before we started recording this about some of the thoughts we had immediately after the interview. And, our goal on this podcast is to find the human story behind these headlines. And I think that with this interview, we did that in a very unique way. I don't think I have ever seen a story in the news about this is what happens when a visually impaired person is displaced in an active war zone.
Yeah, terrifying to think about. I mean, being visually impaired already comes with a certain amount of obvious limits. And then adds to that the idea of having to flee your home into the unknown, escaping bombing campaigns. I mean, Marie-Gabrielle puts it way more eloquently, but it was just fascinating to hear, tragic to hear, but fascinating to hear. And then there was also the angle of, psychological aid and the toll that this war is taking on a repeated basis, and even just before the bombing starts, like the idea of, just imagine receiving a notification that says you have to vacate your house within the next so-and-so hours. And even for someone who isn't visually impaired, that comes with a huge toll, right? And it was just interesting to hear her really delve into the dynamics of that and into the ambitions that Marie-Gabrielle and Equal have into addressing that in the future. So really, really great stuff.
Yeah, and you guys will hear this in the interview, but what Milos is referring to there is that there's a certain point where Marie-Gabrielle gives a very insightful description of what it's like to get one of these messages that we hear about in the media all the time. You know, it's like usually from a certain perspective, right? Evacuate your home. This is your warning, so on and so forth. And there's the impression that creates, especially with an English-speaking audience, when they hear about and read about those sort of things. And then there's the reality of how that actually unfolds on the ground. And that's another thing that we don't hear nearly enough about. So I was very grateful for her to provide that kind of insight, right? And that's the kind of thing, you know, this is what we try to talk about. This is what we try to focus about on this podcast all the time, is that, you know, you hear stories 1.3 million displaced inside Lebanon. Well, what does that actually look like, right? Because there's 1.3 million different stories unfolding at one time, 1.3 million different things going on. And the team at Equal focuses on a particularly vulnerable portion of the population, vulnerable within these extreme circumstances that, again, like I don't hear people talking about.
Yeah. And when we do hear talk about this kind of situation, right, where people say, oh yeah, but the Israelis sent out a warning, right? So they should have heeded that, right? And it's not that simple. And it's not as benefactorial, if that's a word, as one could imagine, right? It's a terrifying thing to receive news that within the next day or so, your house might be bombed, or your street might be taken over. It takes a toll.
Well, often within a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, when we were talking to Marie-Gabrielle, and then again just after the interview, when I was thinking about everything that we discussed, I thought about, we recently did our first episode on Ukraine with a group called Ukrainian Patriot. And one of our guests on that episode, Dennis, was explaining to us, okay, this is what happens when you live in the 15th floor of a high rise in Kyiv and it's negative 25 degrees outside. And there are Iranian Shahed and Iskandar missiles coming in, and there's no power because the power grid has been bombed. And you have, a very young child and your elderly parent who lives with you, and this fire is incoming. What do you do? Right. And then I was thinking about that when Marie-Gabrielle was also walking us through this. This is what happens in Lebanon, right?
Mm-hmm.
When, this a very similar story is playing out. And the more people that we talk to for the show, and the more stories we hear, it's very profound, I would say, to hear about all these connections. Places like, obviously, left to their own devices, there's a lot of differences between cultures and between Ukraine and Lebanon, for example, and a number of the other places that we are planning on covering in upcoming episodes. But the human experience is the same. And if we are being frank, the experience of human suffering is the same all across the world. And at the same time, that's why there's commonalities between people like Dennis and Caitlin and Iman and Marie-Gabrielle, who we know them all, right? They don't know each other, but it's just very interesting to see these kind of human connections play out across the world.
Definitely. Not to mention the fact that for the people we interview themselves, it's a risky business. And I think we've had to delay this episode coming out, one or two times because, Marie-Gabrielle is operating in an environment where you can't always guarantee your safety, right? And it's
absolutely,
and it's
absolutely
all the more reason that we are very thankful, very grateful, very honored to be able to speak with her and with anyone in Lebanon. and the work that they do is really important to highlight in these situations. And it goes without saying that Lebanon is just going to be one of those recurring places that we're going to be talking about, whether it be through these kind of interviews, hoping to offer a unique angle each time, or through our continued coverage with our Voices from the Ground series, which will be continuing not only for Lebanon, but also for other countries as well. And we're going to be highlighting the work of these amazing people for as long as it takes, especially when you get ever more overt statements from the Israeli side declaring that their ambitions for Lebanon resemble that of their ambitions for Gaza in the past couple of years, right? That is a statement that should horrify anyone who's listening.
Agreed, 100%. And on that note, we want to bring you one of the voices from the ground actually making a difference in these circumstances. And so now, ladies and gentlemen, we bring you Marie-Gabrielle Corm. Marie-Gabrielle, thank you so much for being here. To kick things off, can you introduce yourself to the audience and perhaps tell us a little bit about your background and your work with Equal in Lebanon?
Thank you very much for this. My name is Marie-Gabrielle. I am a sociologist with extensive experience in humanitarian and development work, 3 decades involvement with NGOs and international programs. My work focused on community development, monitoring, evaluation, and program management across different environments in Lebanon and the region. I am also the co-founder and executive director of Equal NGO, which is a Franciscan NGO, in which I have been actively involved in shaping strategies, leading operation, and promoting inclusive, right-based initiative for vulnerable population.
How would you describe the mission of Equal in Lebanon?
Well, we started in 2015, and our mission is to ensure that persons with visual impairment have equal access to opportunities, resources, and environment that enable them to live independently and fully in society. Organization works on 2 main fronts. The first one is to empower visually impaired people through skills development, accessibility, and support services. So to lead them to an independent living, whether at home, in the office, or in society. The second axe is the promoting institutional change by raising awareness in schools, universities, companies, hospitals, building capacities, and advocating for inclusive policies and practices. Our ultimate goal is to contribute to a more inclusive society where dignity, autonomy, and participation are guaranteed for all.
So we have a number of questions about the work that Equal does in Lebanon. But before we get into that, I'll note that we are recording on April 17th. And as of last night at midnight, there was a ceasefire announcement. How did you feel when you initially heard this news? And what is the general feeling like right now in the streets and the towns of Lebanon today?
Okay, so, well, what happened yesterday was, of course, a lot spoken of on media, TVs, everywhere, social media too. And people were excited in a way with some kind of disbelief. So we were not really certain it was gonna work. What is the short-term impact and what will happen in 10 days? I mean, like 10 days of ceasefire is probably a good thing, but what about the impact of that on the long term? What will happen after that? Are we going to go to a different Lebanon? Are we going to be able to, for once, like I don't know for how many years, are we going to be able to have a safe life where we know our kids go out in the morning and come back at night safely? So, a lot needs to be seen in the coming days whether effectively this ceasefire is going to work now and what will be the impact of it later. We heard a lot of bombing, a lot of noises at night in different areas of Lebanon. Actually, where we're located, we did not hear a lot, but I was talking to my sister and other people in other regions. They were really scared. At the beginning, it was a like, oh my God, the ceasefire did not work and we're going to war. And then we understood that it was a joy. I mean, who would who would do that for joy? So it's a little bit with the paradox. But we hope, honestly, that the ceasefire will bring with it long-term solutions for everybody. We cannot go to another ceasefire like in 2024 without knowing where we're going. For everybody, for all Lebanese citizens, wherever they are coming from, we have to have something at the end of it.
I completely agree. It is unfortunate that it's the kind of thing that happens way beyond all of our control, whether this ceasefire stays as prolonged or is broken. But in the meantime, while it is in place, how do you and Equal structure your operations? Do you use the time to look after people more, to gather up and to organize yourselves better? Or how do you use this time
Well, you mean after the ceasefire now or before it?
during the ceasefire?
During the ceasefire. Well, we did not plan anything yet. I did not have a chance to meet with the members. I think concerning us, because we work with two population, and we're gonna talk about it maybe later. I don't know if you wanna hit that now. As we work with the vulnerable population, we work with visually impaired and with migrant people. By migrant, I mean a lot of African ladies who are working here that have has fled from exposed region. So those are our main target population with whom we work now. Is the ceasefire gonna change our work? No, we're gonna continue. We have something we're doing now, like distributing basic aid, and we're gonna continue. So our need assessment for the migrant is on process. We're gonna respond on it on Monday. Visually impaired, the need assessment is here, and we are updating it all the time, and we'll continue what we're doing. Like we're a small NGO. We don't have like plans, millions of plans. We have our people that we know we work with, and those we don't know, the migrant, we have collaboration with the church with whom we work, with the vicariate, and on that issue, this is how we're gonna continue working.
We understand that Equal supported over 100 families during the war in 2024 and over 115 families after the Beirut port explosion, excuse me. How many families are you guys supporting right now, or have you been supporting up until today?
Okay, so what we do is we did a need assessment of the population of visually impaired we know of that have been affected by the what's happening. So today we are helping more or less 100 visually impaired with their families. Obviously, they left the area with their families. So this is one. The migrants, I believe we have around 50 or 70 families, but the count is not true because on Monday I'm gonna go see them. In the meantime, I have prepared some clothing because this is what they asked for: linen covers, mattresses, pillows, and this is what we're gonna do on Monday. Distribute what we have and understand a little bit more about their needs. And these people are accounted for between 50 and 70, considering they have kids. And I mean, the family, some of them are married here in Lebanon and living with the whole family. So, what we do is food hygiene, hygiene personal and domestic, covers, linen, mattresses. Unfortunately, we do not do cash assistance depending on the donor. So the requirement of the donor would be to help with the goods. And maybe if this is I mean, maybe later on we should address the psychological support that is mostly needed for everybody.
Well, I wanted to kind of unfortunately like zoom out and realize that unfortunately this isn't the first time that grassroots NGOs in Lebanon, such as yourself, are experiencing the fallout of the conflict. Namely back in 2024, there was a very similar situation. But I was curious to know what kind of differences you perceive from, if any, from back then in 2024 when conflict was occurring at the time versus how the situation is now. Has there been a difference or any challenges in how you conduct your operations?
Between 2024 and 2026, the one thing that hits a lot is the fact that those people, I mean, when they relocated, the fact that some of the people were targeted outside the coastal region of like, we're going to target that region, so go out of it. So they relocated to other places, and sometimes they were some attacks in other places, which increased a little, not increased, which in fact it triggered some tension between the hosting community and the displaced. This is one thing that was not that much present in 2024. And that was a little bit, in a way, understandable because people are scared, but in a way, not acceptable because, like, we used to help each other all the time. You cannot know who's gonna come be your neighbor or anything else. But as an NGO, at least from our perspective, we help everybody. I understand the fear, the anxiety, who's coming. Yes, of course, we understand it. But this is the most, uh, I mean, the point that you see the most in this war. Now, whether 2024 or 2026, the fact that you say to people, okay, I'll send you a map, and on that map, you have to evacuate. So imagine a little bit, if you close your eyes and you think about it, like you receive that, you're sleeping, or you're very old, or you're a mom with kids, I don't know, like really small kids, and you have to evacuate immediately. Forget the fact that you're not taking anything with you. Some of the people are, I don't know, physically challenged. Some are very young. Like the fear of it, whether 2024 or 2026, is probably the same. Like you have minutes to decide who is going to go out of the house, not what to take, who's going out of the house, and how I'm going to do it as quickly as possible. But the difference is, like I said, today, the fear from the other, which is a little bit present. Hela, thanks to God, not everywhere, but yes.
So whether it's fear from the other, as you just mentioned, or fear from the attacker, which you just described, and you mentioned that Equal provides a lot of psychological support. Perhaps this is a good time to go through some of that and explain what that looks like and what kind of support you guys offer.
No, we're not doing it now, but we're planning to start doing it soon. I mean, let's see what's gonna happen in the next 10 days to understand what's the situation. But this is definitely one of the things we should address, whether to visually impaired or to migrants and to the families of both. A visually impaired person might need psychological support in addition to the fact that it is the war. Don't forget that this person is relocating to a new environment. They have to adapt to a new house, how to walk in that house, where to reach the kitchen, where is the fridge. Like, I don't know if in your life you've been working with visually impaired people, but they just memorize the house, like on the left, on the right, three steps. I have the stairs here. So they know fully their houses. They understand it. So relocating is difficult. So you have the trauma of a new place in addition to the trauma of a war. Okay. So already it is a lot for a person who sees. So you can imagine it's a big, big, big dilemma for those who cannot see. So hopefully, if we can secure a small fund for psychological support to go over this population with whom we work, this is what we should do, like the second step or like immediately in parallel. Today, we don't have the means to do that, but as soon as we secure, this is what we will do.
One of our goals with this podcast is to convey the human impacts of events that are often lost in the headlines. of international media coverage. So, what do you wish that people outside of Lebanon, and perhaps with no personal or family connection to Lebanon, understood about the families and the individuals who have been displaced so far by this war?
Look, all I can say is that displacement affected all families living in a specified region, regardless their religion, their nationalities. You have a lot of African, you have Syrian. I mean, you have people, you have Canadian, one Canadian that was killed 2 days ago, regardless of their affiliation. So if you close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself being displaced, you don't have a home, you don't own your life, you're being separated from everything you know, you lose your dignity, you're exposed, you're vulnerable. Those who fled are not, it was not easy for them to find home, a place where to go, and they're not sure whether when this is over they will be able to go to their houses, if the house is here, if it's damaged, if it exists. And you have to think that back in, like, if we think a little bit back in time, you have had already the economic crisis, the Beirut explosion, the 2024 war, and today this one. Those are major financial constraints that are adding on these families that already will go back one day, hopefully, to a total uncertainty. No work if they work in that region, no house, no belonging, no property. This, of course, caused a physical and emotional stress. It created tensions with families, between families. Maybe the husbands are, I don't know, a little bit more aggressive. The wives are aggressive with the children. It's like even us who do not live in the region, who are a little bit far of it, like being confined at home, not knowing what is happening, we are always stressed. Many of us, our friends, they have stomach problem, anxiety, they do not sleep at night. They wake up every single second, look at the phone and what happened? Did I hear it? Did I not hear it? What is the situation? In all houses, you have the TV on, whether you are exposed or not exposed, affected, not affected. You cannot but live in a situation of stress. That's all I can say. So people outside of Lebanon, of course, they see the news, they see, depending which media, you have that interpretation or this one. But the fact remains the same. People are very tense. They are afraid. They lived in anxiety, and those were impacted their health, emotional, or their behavior with the family or people around them.
Could you provide our listeners with a bit more of a history of Equal? You said you're one of the co-founders, so a bit deeper into that. And perhaps also, what are some of your team's long-term priorities outside of the direct emergency response, which you're obviously dealing with right now?
Okay, as I said, Equal was created in 2015 by Bishop Cesar Esseo, who is the Latin vicar, apostolic Latin vicar of Lebanon, and with myself and my friend Nicole Irani. And we, with two other persons, we created Equal to respond to the need of vulnerable population. We started our work with refugees, Syrian and then Iraqi, and we worked a lot in suburbs of Beirut, where the situation of the financial constraints made people very vulnerable with a lot of problems. And then we centered our work on visual impairment because we saw that this group of people was not living in an inclusive way, the way they are living outside of Lebanon. So we wanted to promote their right and their inclusion, okay, through a right-based approach rather than a charitable one. They don't need pity. They are like really better than us in many, many ways. So since the establishment of Equal, we addressed the structural barrier that prevent them from fully participating in society. whether in education, employment, accessibility, and social inclusion. But more than that, beyond emergency response, our long-term priority focus, like I said at the beginning, on two axes: empowering them so they are independent at home, cooking sessions, cleaning, ironing, makeup, dressing, computer literacy, business English, hiking, swimming, all that form of first acts that goes on to empowerment, so they own their life. And the second act, which we believe is complementary, it doesn't serve to empower them if the society does not know how to treat them. And they do not know because usually they're not exposed to seeing them as part of society, so they don't know how to behave. And we started 3 years ago a program on awareness, an awareness campaign program in Catholic schools, where we had till now more than 4,000 people, students, that have been with us through these sessions. We go to schools and we raise awareness through blindfolding the students. They are going to take some activities like, for example, imagine themselves in a house, like press the lemon and collect the juice in a glass, put some toothpaste on your toothbrush, fold your shirt, detect which is, I don't know, hummus cereal from, I don't know, anything else. So we had this along with some visually impaired who will go with us and give a testimony and open a question and answers for them. The idea was to raise awareness for the students age 11 to 13, because we believe that they are like a sponge. Like this is gonna impact them and they will talk about it, and they are capable of changing their mentalities, and at least the mentality or the ideas, um, that the stigmatized ideas the families or the surrounding have. And this year we started with university students, hospitals, and hopefully one day with companies. Like this, we would have had a broader spectrum of people, a little bit being sensitized on that issue. So these two axes are complementary. They aim to improve the idea people have about visual impairment and open the possibility for those persons to be included in society, no next to it. The model they have in Europe is a very good model that we would like to replicate in Lebanon.
And you mentioned a few times the Franciscan origins of Equal and the Franciscan values it's based on. How does that help inform you or inform your work? And do you perceive that there's a difference between your organization and any others purely based off of that?
Okay, so Franciscan values are at the heart of our work and our approach. They guide us to act with humility, solidarity, and deep respect for the dignity of every person, especially the most vulnerable. This is the core of our work. It's not only about providing assistance, but recognizing each other as a right holder, a person, not a simple beneficiary in number. It's not like I'm doing a report to any donor agency. This is not what we care about. We care for the people as a people and for him to get to have his right fulfilled. These values also emphasize the present and proximity. Like we work in close coordination with community. We listen to them, to their need. We respond to them with responsibility. We do not come say, okay, we're going to do that. The need comes from them. They talk to us. They tell us what is the need. And this is in the core of the Franciscan approach. So this translates also in a person-centered support. prioritizing participation, dignity, and justice in all actions. I'm sure other NGOs, each one of them have its own way of doing it, but we're a church and the Franciscan NGO basing our work on these values.
One of Equal's core missions is human rights, and we understand that you also focus a lot on women's rights in particular. So, what sort of topics do you cover regarding human rights, and what sort of specific focus do you have on the rights of women in Lebanon, and what does the Equal approach look like there?
Okay, so yes, we work a lot on women's and children rights apart from the visually impaired rights. We have conducted many sessions concerning women's rights. I mean, especially if you look a little bit what happened all along the years, and even with COVID, like not only in Lebanon but internationally, women suffered a lot of the confinement, and we tried to raise awareness about their right, their responsibilities, how to against violence, the harassment, and we did a whole year of training session in coordination with the St. Joseph University in Lebanon to work on their rights, and we invited the women, whether Lebanese or non-Lebanese, but visually impaired or non-visually impaired. But we also invited the men to be able to convey the message. And even when we worked with the Syrian population in the camp long time ago at the beginning of our work, we used to work with women and men. And like, it's something in the core, because if you want to change a mentality, you cannot work only with the group, one group. You need the approval in a way of another group to be able to make a transformation. And this is the idea that we wanted to convey in our messages, in our all the work that we did with them. So human rights are central to our work. We approach them very carefully. So we focus, of course, on the right of people visually impaired. We target gender equality, women's right, protection from violence, discrimination, access to education, employment, the importance of inclusion, community life. We also refer on the law 220/2000, which is the law related to the right of person with disability. That laws is supposed to guarantee education, employment, healthcare, accessibility, and many other things. The point is, it's very good on paper, but poorly implemented. But yes, so it's a legal tool for advocacy. It's a reference for many NGOs, this law, but unfortunately, we're not there yet. So if we go back to the idea of human rights, so these are the core, and this is why we work with the schools, universities, hospitals, companies, community group. We work a lot through scouts associations. So the sessions are often very interactive. We ask the participation of the people. We do also role models. So it's not only theory, but also it's a combination of awareness, practical guidance, advocacy, a lecture, but also some exercises to make it a little bit more interactive. Hoping that we create long-term sustainable change on how these rights are understood and implemented within the future, hopefully the near future.
Yeah, and you mentioned there at the beginning the issue of child protection, which is something you also work with. Are there any stories you can share of how children have been impacted specifically by this war, by other crises that they've been impacted by, and how your work has been shaped as a result?
Through all these years, we've worked to ensure child protection, whether in the Syrian camps, the Iraqi, the poor suburbs of Beirut or not. We have implemented activities aiming at supporting their well-being, their development, educational support, awareness on their right and protection both to them and their parents, psychological activities, and creating safe recreational spaces to ensure stability, build confidence, excluding the neglect, showcasing the exploitation and how to address it. As the crisis is evolved today, we're trying to adapt that probably with the migrants more than the other one because they have a lot of kids and small kids, let's say. Today, I mean, in every war, children are those who are paying the highest price. According to UNICEF, less than 6 weeks of war, the first 6 weeks, we had already 600,000 child who have been killed or injured. With over more than 1 million of displaced person, we have 40% of these that are children. So, in this context, they are experiencing not only displacement, but instability. They are experiencing loss of routine, affecting their psychological and emotional well being. They are exposed to fear, uncertainty, and probably traumatic event, depending each one with the situation, without fully understanding what is happening. Now, I don't have specific stories to tell about this, but all I can say that even small intervention make a difference, providing them with clothes, hygiene items, basic necessities will help restore a sense of normality, dignity for them, creating safety and care where they are gonna feel a little bit seen, supported, having people around them that would talk to them, play with them. I'm sure the parents do not have even the mind to do that. So, building on our previous experiences, the idea is to expand this effort and reintroduce activities that are structured for them, some safe spaces, psychological support also for them, educational engagements, because we have more than, I don't know, 150,000 person students that have are out of school or are in sheltered, so they lost education and safe places also themselves.
You've been very generous with your time today, and we really appreciate your insight on these topics. We only have a couple more questions for you before we wrap things up. So I wanted to ask you, what are your hopes for Lebanon after this war? I know that we're in a very fragile ceasefire period right now, but as someone who is dedicating her life to helping with these issues, what gives you hope when you think about the spirit of the people of Lebanon?
Okay, we are a population who is resilient. Every time we have something happening, of course, at the beginning it's very difficult, but we stand up at the end of the day and we start again, we build again, we work harder. So if ever the ceasefire goes well, I don't know what well means now, but I mean, if ever we go back to a life that is calm, peaceful, I mean, we have everything to be living together with no problem and constructing our country for a better life. On the visual impairment status, what I would like, it's a different thing. I would like to have the government involved one day, change, adapt, let's say, enforce this law so they have equal possibilities, and I mean, so many things could be done for visual for all I mean, all disabilities, but also for visual impairment, where they can live in a better society, included having access to work depending on their level of education and their capabilities rather than being just a number, like a compassionate person will offer a job, like that is not exactly upon their capabilities.
To echo Andrew, thank you so much for the time that you've given us. We like to end our episodes with offering our listeners a chance to, or actionable ways that they can get involved or help out with the mission that you are describing. So, to the people listening, if they wanted to help out, be it with the visual impairment mission that you've got going, the crisis response right now, or any other topics that you deem important, what's the best way for them to get involved?
They can locate us easily through Facebook and Instagram, of course, but also we have an email address that I can share with you.
Absolutely.
It's equal frngo@gmail.com. So those are three contacts that they can use to reach out. Any kind of help is welcome, whether like even knowledge. If we're thinking about visual impairment, something that has been successful in another country, an experience, like everything would be helpful. Um, we're open to many ideas coming from abroad, and we're trying to make this situation better for visual impairment. Now, on the level of the crisis, I hope it's not gonna last, but if ever it lasts, we we will welcome any kind of support also to cover the basic needs of visual impaired people and their families, as well as migrants. And I hope not, but if ever the war continues, I mean, many people will need another type of things as the time goes. Like basic needs, once insured, will have to go to other things like psychological support, other recreational activities for children, safe places, I don't know, work for some people, cash assistance. So many things will probably be missing at a later stage. We hope that it's not gonna drag, it's gonna end in a way or another, better way for everybody, I hope. But if ever it does not, these are things that we will have to consider for the future. As Equal is a very small NGO. We do not plan like other NGOs for a safety plan. We do not have emergency fund. We have emergency plan in our head or written like that we can implement as possible if we have the fund. So that's the idea. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today. We really admire the work that you and the team at Equal are doing, and we're very happy to try and shed a spotlight on that. So thank you again.
Thank you very much for both of you. Thank you so much.
This has been an episode of the St. Martin's Cloak Podcast. Today is April 17, 2026. Thank you for listening, and stay safe.